Okay, believe it or not, I'm actually very unfamiliar with Zoom, so forgive me if there's any weird things I accidentally do here. I started reporting, I took my first deposition on October 22nd of 2014, I think. And so I was interning with Laura before that. I don't exactly remember when we started working together, but I took the July CSR of that year and took my first job in October. And I'm sorry, Laura, what was the question that you asked me? Was that it? Or
that was it? Yes, that was it.
Okay.
And go ahead and, oops, and I wrote superior wrong. Go ahead and tell them a little bit about, you know, how you did depositions first, and then you found your officialship, and what you like about it.
Yeah, so coming out of school and the entire time in school, I thought, no way, I'm never stepping a foot in a courtroom. I loved the idea of the freedom that depot reporting gives. And so it wasn't really a goal of mine to ever be in court, but I started doing depots, and definitely a big learning curve. I know how to, you know, that wasn't the issue. It was mostly the procedural type things of, you know, how to keep my books so I can do my taxes and things like that that were really challenging for me. And so it was taking some time to get going with the depositions, but they were coming, and Laura really, really helped me. So I encourage you all to keep with her, because I wouldn't have had another resource at that time to help me through like she did. And so I did, you know, probably about a year's worth of depot reporting, and maybe after 6 months or 8 months, somewhere in there, I had a friend that I went to school with who was pro temping in court in Solano County. And she convinced me that, hey, I know you don't want to work in court, but maybe you should just give it a shot. And I did it really for the sake of the experience. And I started pro temping. I would get my schedule from them, and I would fill my other days up with depots as I could. And it was very minimal at first, but before you know it, I started working there more and more, and I liked that sometimes, you know, the calendar would be very short. So I would come in for a morning on a civil law and motion calendar where there's several different cases, but they're all kind of just checking in. So it goes pretty quickly. I'd get there, set up, I'd be there for 30 minutes, I'd get to leave, and I just got paid for my whole morning. And I didn't have to really produce the transcripts from it. I was also having a really hard time just starting out learning how long it takes me to produce a transcript, and just kind of that time management aspect was also really challenging for me. So I really, of course you get transcripts in court, but it's not every single case that you report, as opposed to depositions. So I really enjoyed having that break of getting to go and be on my machine, which is my favorite part, and then not necessarily having to do immediately afterwards. So let's see. So I just found myself in court more and more there in Solano County. And then one day I got a letter in the mail from San Mateo County, where I'm currently working, and they were hiring. And so again, I kind of went into it with the thought of, you know, I'll do these interviews. I also had one in Sacramento County at the same time, and I just was doing it for the experience, really. I wasn't really expecting anything of it, but I'm finally working, and now all these things are happening, and so why wouldn't I give it a shot? And they hired me. I was shocked. I was not expecting to be hired, and but I took it, and I've been there ever since.
Great, great, yes. And I was sad when you stopped doing depots because you're such a great reporter, and I knew that from the first day you sat in with me.
Thank you.
We had our we had our laptops like that, and I was watching you write, and it was great. So sad for us,
Yeah.
but happy.
Well, sometimes I miss it. I wonder, what it would have been like to stick it out a little bit longer. And I definitely keep in the back of my mind that I may switch back over one day. For now, for example, it was very lonely, which is something I wasn't expecting coming out and being brand new. I worked through school, and now all of a sudden I don't have a workplace, and I didn't have that group of people, to kind of share my day to day with, and that was surprisingly challenging for me. So, and also I appreciate the benefits, of course. The structure of it, of working in court, is something that appeals to me, but I definitely have it in the back of my mind that, I came into this thinking I love the freedom of depot reporting, so who knows?
Well, my dad started doing depots, then went to court for, I don't know, 13, 14 years, and then finished his career with depots. I mean, that's the beauty of this career, is that you can switch around and do things in your same, with your same skill. So that's the cool thing.
Right, and you're doing the captioning now, which I think is fascinating and amazing. Yeah. So there's all types of things that I go to seminars, and I keep it all in the back of my mind of I want to stay. Of course, I have a court focus right now, but I like to stay up to date and kind of as much as I can in kind of all the different areas, so that, if there does need to be a change one day, I can kind of have my finger on the pulse of everything as a whole.
So I was going to say, regarding this question, judges they were attorneys first before they became judges, except in some very other situations where you do have places around the country where you don't have to be an attorney to be a circuit judge or something like that. But in general, they're attorneys first, so they do draw on what they know, their knowledge, all their law school, all their research they've done. But I think for specific things, and Jacqueline can tell me what she thinks about this, they do look stuff up and research case law. The attorneys will bring them case law. Now, if you've been attending my dictations these past couple of weeks, a couple of times I read to you those, 239 Cal App, 415, 1978, all of that is case law they're citing. And it's just giving the judge and the other attorney the citation of it so they can go look it up. And that's the law that they want the judge to follow from that case. So they do a lot of research as attorneys. And I remember my grandfather, who was a judge, he was reading new case law all the time, even if he didn't, even if it wasn't have anything to do with the case he was working on right now. It was just, he was always interested in new cases that were happening and coming down, and new laws that were being made because of it.
Yes, the only thing I would add to that is they also have, the judges are constantly researching and, yes, staying up to date so that they can, I think, better interpret what the attorneys are arguing to them. But we have a staff of research attorneys who kind of sit in the background, and if the judge has got a big issue, he can hand over that information to them, and they'll do a lot of the deep digging to kind of point them in the right direction. So there is a team that actually helps the judges kind of stay on the right track and expedite things. But attorneys like to argue, and they like to talk, and if they can find what to do to get their word in, they are going to do it.
And you might have heard this mentioned before, or just heard it in general, or even on TV, but some attorney saying, I clerked for this judge, or I'm a law clerk. Different venues, obviously Supreme Court has a lot of law clerks, and it sounds like that's what Jacqueline's talking about in her county. They have attorneys are basically clerking for the judges, helping them look up stuff and everything. So definitely interesting. Very true. They love to hear themselves talk. So.
Yes. So this is a good question. Long hours, yes, it definitely takes some time to build up the endurance. I would say first starting out, the jobs I was taking weren't really that long. I mean, sometimes they were, the depositions, but a lot of them were like workers' comp type stuff where it would just be an hour, 2 hours. And a lot of the court cases, pro-temming, I wasn't pro-temming and doing trials day after day after day, full days. It was more, they had me in family law a lot where I could just step in for a day and it didn't really affect everything else going on. So I would say that the biggest adjustment is being in trial, which is just exhausting. To be on the record from 8:30 or 9 in the morning until 4:30 or 5 in the evening. We do have nice long lunch breaks, but it's definitely a certain type of mental exhaustion, not even just physically, but after a while, towards the end of the day, sometimes my brain just can't keep up. And so with that being said, you really have no choice but to keep up. And so the exercise and self-care definitely comes into play. I try to do, my regular just hour-long workout as I can, but within the day, throughout the day, it's kind of always evolving, really, just to do your stretches while you're on your break and, try to get outside at lunch to get some fresh air, just the little things. And, some days you don't want to do anything, and I just hold myself in my office and, just take a mental breather where I don't really have to engage in conversations with people, and I can just kind of regroup myself. So all of those things, definitely self-care is something that I'm trying to really focus on the front end so that I don't injure myself later on. There are days where it's definitely, I'm more uncomfortable than others. I have a judge who's really receptive to that. And so I can say, this is what you're doing and it's not necessarily working for me. Can we try it this way? So it's definitely a team effort. But yes.
Okay, anybody have one last question for today? As we've said, she'll be back, which is great. And any last question? Again, if you want, not if you want, I would really suggest you get set up, use your EV360 settings or your real-time coach settings next time to write into the chat box. It's really, really helpful, and you'll see it's not as bad as you might think. And it's good to just practice putting yourself out there. And I really think it helps with test anxiety too. Anything you do to get any sort of anxiety to do with writing is.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Laura. I have a good readback story from when I was doing a depo.
Okay.
Which is just kind of goes to the point of even if you feel uncomfortable or vulnerable to do real time and get used to that idea, because one time I was doing a deposition and I was very new and I forgot for a moment that I was not just practicing. And it's definitely a different mindset because when you're practicing, you can take your hands off the keyboard for a minute to regroup yourself and it's okay. But in the real world, it's not so much like that. So I kind of forgot where I was for a second, and the attorney is just giving me this long-winded answer. I mean, I don't know, not a whole page, but paragraph long answer. And it's a doctor and it's just over my head. And so I revert to kind of this practice mode again. And there's at the end of the answer, there's this long pause and it kind of dawns on me that, oh my gosh, they could ask me to read this back. And I don't know how well I did. And was I even paying attention? I don't, just kind of I spaced out or something. And so I'm thinking like, please don't ask for readback. Please don't ask for readback. And it's just this long, what felt like forever pause. And at the end of it, he asked me for readback. And I I think my actual response was, "Are you kidding?" I think I actually said that to him which I'm so embarrassed, but because I had been thinking, don't ask, don't ask, don't ask. And then he asked me, I just felt like I was in a dream or something, I don't know. And so I collected my thoughts and said, okay, this is different material for me. So just, if you wouldn't mind giving me a second to kind of read through my notes here and make sure that I'm going to be able to pronounce everything correctly. And I'm nervous now even talking about it for some reason, but they kind of let me off the hook. I started to read back and they could tell I was struggling. I think they were just mostly trying to test me. But they said, oh, okay, that's all we needed. Thank you. But it was that realization after that of, okay, I am not in school anymore and this is uncomfortable, but I need to stay present and I need to stay focused and not get that complacency. Not that I meant to, but it just happened. So that's what I would say as an example of just, put yourself out there. No one's judging your writing. It's all just practice. You're all just, doing as best as you can. And that's really the same thing that you're going to be doing when you're working too. You're just doing the best that you can.
And also, sorry to interrupt you, but
no.
also you can stop them. And that's something I like to practice with all of you students too, is stopping. Because, for example, had she stopped them if she didn't understand anything or something, then she could have read back.
Yes.
Right. So and it's hard to do when you're a new reporter. So that's why I have you guys always practicing. Sometimes I have them when we're in the same room. I have them yell out "stop" or something when it's getting too fast, just to practice being assertive.
Yes, it's very intimidating to, especially in a courtroom, for me to speak out in front, be sitting there in front and interrupt these formal court proceedings. But that's why we're there and that's why we stand out. So that's definitely also a good point, that had I felt more comfortable speaking up for myself at that time, I probably would have been much less embarrassed if I would have just said something as opposed to what actually happened.
Yes. So reinforcing. See, I've been telling you guys that, and now you have another reporter telling you that. So every reporter is going to tell you that I'm going to bet, no matter what. So, okay, well, great. Well, that is all for today. Thank you all for taking the time to come. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much to Jacqueline, and also for agreeing to come back again.
Yes, thanks for inviting me, Laura. It's a pleasure.
You certainly add a lot to this, so thank you so much. And everybody is thanking you right now in the chat box.
You're welcome, everyone. So happy to be here.